Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our farm series. Today, we're going to add another critter to our stable, and I think it's going to be the metal-consuming plug slug, or is it slug plug? I always get the two reversed, no big deal. I look forward to reading in the comments below how many times I mess it up during this episode. First, I wanted to give an update on the Pacu situation, and it's going pretty well. I received a bunch of good comments, not only with great names for our new system, but also in suggestions in the way other people would do it. One fair point that I wanted to mention is you could still do the sort of starvation farming by using the Pacu plank. The Pacu plank would ensure that your regular aquarium stayed chock full and all of the eggs would just end up hatching, starving, and then dying, but not self-replicating. And that would be okay, because in the very long term, the same thing is going to happen to here. There'll be so many fish in these tanks that they will no longer be able to reproduce because of the confined and cramped tags. But by using this system with the giant pools, it'll allow you to get the population of Pacu up to max as soon as possible. Additionally, if we were to suddenly start adding a lot more water to our saltwater tank, the population would be able to grow quickly again. I also wanted to correct some earlier math that I did. Well, the math was correct, but I didn't take one thing into account. We did all of our math based on the Pacu, when it dies, producing us 1,000 kilos worth of Pacu fillet. I don't know why. Sometimes I get a little loopy and completely forgot about the fact that we'd be turning all of that Pacu fillet into cooked seafood, which gives you an additional 600 calories worth of food. So the long story short of it is, when you're trying to figure out how many Pacu you need to feed your colony, well, instead of using 25 Pacu, because they die every 25 cycles, required to feed one duplicate, it's closer to 17 Pacu for every duplicate. Because those 17 Pacu will still take 25 cycles to die, but they'll be giving you 60% more calories, as long as you're cooking the Pacu fillet. Elsewhere on the colony, I need to start paying attention to the carbon dioxide and the chlorine gas. Yes, we have a wonderful carbon skimmer down here, but because this polluted line is blocked, it's not able to run freely. So one thing I can do to sort of help this out is disconnect it from the bridge and just have it do a 50-50 split up here. It'll run more often, but still not at maximum throughput. But I get into that whole point just because I eventually need to build our sort of space garbage dump and start ejecting all of those extra gases in and around our colony into space. But before we can do that, I actually need to get to space, not only for that garbage collection, but we're now finished with our Tier 5 research and need to move over into the research that requires the data analysis research. Now, we do have a lot of data banks saved up at 77, so it'll give us some research, but eventually we're going to have to set up the orbital data collection lab. We can also get more data banks by taming even more geysers. In fact, because we're going to be raising some plug slugs, I'm not completely comfortable feeding them only iron, especially considering the average output of this volcano is 349 grams per second, which 349 grams per second times 600 seconds in a cycle will give us about 209 kilos worth of iron per cycle. And with our plug slugs eating 60 kilos per cycle, that'll give us enough iron to feed about 3.5 plug slugs. I wanted to raise more plug slugs than that. Unfortunately, we don't have many other volcanoes, and I'd rather use the preponderance of iron in making more steel, even though we are up to 167 tons worth, than feeding it all to plug slugs. We do have one more iron volcano down here, which we can get online, and I'm gonna have to sometime this episode, just to be able to have enough to raise, say, 5 plug slugs, and then whatever's left over we can turn into steel. I thought I had other metal volcanoes on this planetoid, but I'll be honest, I'm playing too many colonies and have completely forgotten where they are. That is, if in fact they actually existed in the first place. I did find our liquid sulfur geyser, and this is going to be important because I think the next critter we're going to try to put into the farm is going to be the divergents, such as the sweetles and the grubs. But we've already taken care of Drecos. We still have the betas to do, hatches, Pacus, pips, poke shells. I don't think we've done shine bugs yet, and we've handled slicksters as well, which is going to leave us shovels, puffs, morbs, moos, and of course the betas. Oh, wait a minute, I found a gold volcano over here. That's pretty good. I don't love the location of it because of all these water pools, which means I'm gonna have to drop this water into this tank. Of course, that's not too big of a deal, so we might as well start digging up again. It would really help if I'd actually get in here and do all this digging. I've kind of pre-planned where that water is gonna end up dropping to make sure it doesn't cause too much of a wreck. And it's not gonna be too bad. Most of it's gonna drop onto the top of our colony, spill over to the side, other than what's going to spill in here, so maybe I do something like that. So it forces it to spill this way, which it'll bump off this natural gas geyser and then fall all the way down, where we have an eager pump waiting. I've also noticed that we're a little backed up on our ingest lines, and that is due to the fact that our overflow containers are chock full. We're also getting really close to the brine and the polluted water. Of course, I think the brine's going to drop as soon as we finish this. You might be wondering how we're going to be dealing with this. Well, I'm going to put a small little liquid lock in here. And once I do, we're going to tunnel all the way down and start to clean up this mess again. Super excited for that one. With those reservoirs back in place, all the ethanol and extra oil that is coming from the bottom of the map will have a place to go. They then just take those bottles and they drop them off in here. I think next time I do this, because I will be doing this next time, the system is just too clean. The ability to be able to add any sort of liquid and the system just sorting it and cooling it to where we don't have to worry about is just wonderful. Why has our cooling loop stopped? Oh no, what's happened now? Oh, wonderful, because this aqua tuner is now completely broken, which I received a lot of theories about it inside the comments as well. And right now, I'm still chalking this up to glitch because yes, I understand, as evidenced by the dirt sitting below the thermal aqua tuner, that somehow this polluted water is flashing and cracking the pipes. That's never been the question for me. The question for me has always been how. These are insulated pipes. They don't transfer thermals in the same way that normal pipes would. Yeah, the temperature of the pipe itself is 230 degrees. Well, that's because the inside of here is 230 degrees. But notice the water that sits here. Even if I separate it from the pipes, yeah, it starts going up, but very, very, very slowly. It would take it a significant amount of time to get all the way to 120 degrees in order to flash into steam. Not to mention that when this whole thing stops, because of the bridge configuration, whenever the thermal aqua tuner does stop, it allows the packet to pass from this pipe here. And for those who thought the theory was, well, maybe it's the bridge, remember, water doesn't actually sit in the bridge and oxygen not included. It sort of just passes from one side to the other. The bridge itself doesn't ever hold water. So the only way I could see it possible for this polluted water to actually sit there and drive up the temperature in its pipe is if this thermal aqua tuner was ever running at 100%. And I know it didn't happen in the beginning because we were having such power issues that the thermal aqua tuner was dying quite a bit. One theory I did hear though is it had something to do with temperature exchange with the 2-tile high. I do know that I've been using 2-tile high thermal aqua tuner setups for quite some time. Other folks have said they haven't seen it in a 3-tile high bath. The reason why I got in the habit of doing it 2 tiles high was because, well, I only had to add 2 layers of liquid. So for me, the jury's still out on this, but as another example, this thermal aqua tuner had to work the most out of the entire system because it was going through all of the hot salt water, and so that polluted water would be much warmer. And so at the beginning, this thermal aqua tuner was running at 100%, and notice there's no dirt down here, nor is there any damage to this system. So who knows? More evidence to the 2-tile high theory is the fact that any of my thermal aqua tuners in the metal volcano setups, well, they don't ever burst their pipes. So I suppose I am going to have to get in here and fix this issue. We'll fix that by putting a little oil bead right here. In fact, do I have a little bucket? I do have a little bucket. I will just move the bucket of oil right there. We don't need to build that anymore. And while we're in there, I'll be able to sweep all this beautiful salt. Now let's see if Echo's going to be smart enough to catch the oil before it just ends up inside of our water tank. And yes, for once, I did remember. Looks like we didn't have enough to spill over anyways, so I can deconstruct this tile, and then our dupes in suits will be able to get in there. There we go. All the repairs are underway, and I'll even add some more polluted water to this line. Yes, I know there's little blobs of other type of liquids in there, but we're only cooling it to 20-something degrees anyways, so it's not a big deal. And with the whole room being spick and span and repaired, I can put the insulated tile right back. I also need to keep an eye on that bridge because I do not want to overfill this line. Of course, that's not wholly necessary because we have a buffer tank here, and oh, there's the oil of shame. Oh well, moving on. As for the primary subject of this episode, it's going to be the plug slugs. Remember, the plug slugs have multiple variants. Sponge slugs are still always going to be on my kill list, so we're definitely not raising them. Smog slugs are almost useless. They just gobble up unbreathable gases and then hook themselves to a pipe and dump it off. I still haven't figured out a great way to use those, but at least a use case that makes the juice worth the squeeze. So we, of course, are going to be sticking with the primary plug slug because they're also just absolutely great power generators. And it would make sense to put them close to our hydrogen generators, or at least the ingest line, so I'm thinking over here is pretty good. I'm going to use my standard house design, and I say house because it ends up having a peak just like a house does. We are going to want it still to be 96 tiles, at least the primary area, and 8 by 12 does that. I think this will look perfect. So we will frame this out, say here and here. Now, because the plug slugs are going to emit hydrogen gas, I like to make sure that I use a system that makes it less likely that the plug slugs are going to be down here emitting that hydrogen. And that we do that by putting the food up here. Because normally when the critter gets done eating is when they expel their waste. So we're going to do something like this. And what this is going to do is allow one layer of carbon dioxide to fill on this bottom level here, which will prevent any gases from escaping. And since I do know that we're not going to have enough metal to run 8 plug slugs, I'm thinking 5 is probably more like it. So I have no problem making this stable a little bit smaller at, say, 95 tiles. This top layer is going to be mesh, and we'll have a wonderful critter feeder here. We're going to be bringing all that metal in via a conveyor receptacle, and we'll have the auto sweeper be able to load the critter feeder with that metal. And then, of course, we're going to need a grooming station. Normally, I put the grooming station close to the entrance, but in this case, remember, I like to keep the plug slugs away from the entrance, so we're going to put it over here along with a wonderful critter drop-off, not made of steel. The next thing we have to worry about is the incubation center, because remember, plug slugs don't necessarily perish when they're sitting in water. So considering how we just let our extra poke shells sit in an area to live out their life, we're going to be doing the same thing with the plug slugs. But it's also just a convenient spot to put an incubator. And I think this is a good spot here. Now, there'll never be any metal in here, so we don't have to worry about the plug slugs in this location doing bad things, such as releasing hydrogen in our oxygen atmosphere. Now, looking to see if I can get away with using an unpowered incubator, the plug slug lives for 100 cycles, and their eggs incubate at the same rate as our hatches, which means one unpowered incubator will be able to give us 5 plug slugs, because 100% incubation divided by the 5% change per cycle is 20. And we need these plug slugs over the course of 100 cycles, and 20 goes into 100 5 times. So because of that and our metal restrictions, I think 5 is going to be the perfect number. Select plug sluglet, plug slug, and then all we'll need is another couple of egg catchers. We'll put the conveyor loader here. Actually, I might be able to put the conveyor loader here, because then this auto sweeper and this auto sweeper can hit it. Have all the eggs be dropped off right through here. And we can even add an auto sweeper in here to be able to load the incubator itself. Now, all the lines here are pretty decently full, so I think we'll add another one. Man, I really missed having power spines. It is just way too convenient. And just like that, we already have power for this system. Oh, wait a minute. I need to move this around a little bit because I need to get the power spine in here. Grab our heavy wall conductive joint plate, and now I can take the spine, bring it right in, and go right across. And this will give us slots for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As long as the plug slug can hang from here, and the right side of the joint plate's not going to interfere with it, this should be fine. Now it's time to work on our hydrogen catch. Remember, hydrogen is lighter than oxygen, so the hydrogen's going to float up. And when it does, we're going to want to collect it with a gas pump and feed it to our hydrogen generators. But we also want to make sure it's only hydrogen up here. So a system I like using, not saying this is the perfect system, I'm sure there's plenty of other genius level ideas, is I use a gas element sensor here and here, and a couple of filter gates. I use independent filter gates because I want hydrogen to be stuck in these tiles for at least 30 seconds before this gas pump will start pumping, which means all of this area is all hydrogen. We're also going to grab an AND gate because I want both element sensors to be detecting hydrogen before we start pumping, and then I'll plug it right into there. Another method I like to use is an Atmos sensor. And the reason why we use an Atmos sensor is to make sure it's enough hydrogen. In other words, not just randomly 10 grams here and 10 grams here that just happen not to filter up. The Atmos sensor might be a little irrelevant, but I think it's a good fail-safe. So we're also going to bind an AND gate here, except I'm going to be tricky about where to put it. I think this looks good here. And then I'll take the Atmos sensor, put it on one side, and then I'm going to take the output of the gas element sensors and put it on the other side. And that way, it takes both systems sending greens, the combined system with the AND gate here, and the Atmos sensor system before this pump is allowed to pump. Make sure we select hydrogen gas for our element sensors. Also send some power up there, and I'm going to go right here above the auto sweeper since the plug slugs won't hang there anyways. I just realized if they can hang on the side of the auto sweeper, which I believe they can, we'll have even more spots. So I may not have to worry about the right side of this joint plate. Lastly, we need our gas pipes, and I will just take it right off of here. The gas shouldn't be warm, so we're just going to connect it with a 50-50 split that heads down into our gas reservoir. By the way, great news. Our slicksters are now starving because we've managed to get rid of all the carbon dioxide that was stuck up here, which means I can probably get rid of this one, and now we'll just leave it up to this one for a little while. Our little emergency tile for the slicksters has also worked. So in this room, for instance, we have 101 critters, all consuming carbon dioxide. And they no longer drown anymore because they float up and then just hop on, which helps keep this count going. Which means I can regain all of these materials here, being careful not to deconstruct the wrong thing. I've also started the process of being able to filter out all of the excess polluted oxygen that's been sitting up here. I don't know where this came from. It's quite annoying because all this polluted water has been flashing since the beginning of the creation of this thing. But regardless, it's here and now I have to deal with it. I tried to put in a high pressure gas vent. Unfortunately, we're already up over 34 kilos worth of steam pressure. So I'm going to use a standard gas reservoir and hook the line right in. And yeah, it'll only be 150 kilos before I'm going to have to deconstruct this. But deconstructing it is just going to cause it to release all of its steam back into here. This is the one way you can get around the 20 kilo pressure limitation of the high pressure gas vent. Last thing to do is seal up the roof here, and I think we're going to put above, let's say, 1,000 grams. So to recap, there will have to be at least 1,000 grams worth of hydrogen pressure in these tiles, and hydrogen present on this tile here for at least 30 seconds on each side. And then as soon as one of these does not detect any hydrogen, this pump will again stop. Because remember, the pump pumps from these tiles and these tiles in a cross pattern. So ideally, it would have been a little bit better if I made this a little higher. And I could not be lazy just by putting a filter in here for the just in cases, but I'm willing to roll those dice. We also managed to find another dupe inside of the printing pod. We had the choices between this pay and the nails. Nails is good at farming and can't do any attacking, but they also have mole hands. But this pay has ranching, rocketry, and supplying, plus early bird and germ resistance. Unfortunately, they do have allergies, and this is a farm, so pay is going to be one of your more sniffly friends. So welcome to the farm, duplicate number 23, Broken Moon Alchemist. Now it's time to work this gold volcano. First thing to do is clean up the entire area. We're going to have to vacuum all this out anyways. And because it's gold, I'm just going to do a simple 1 turbine setup as opposed to a 2 turbine setup that we used for an iron volcano. But to be honest, I think I can start getting away with the one steam turbine on the iron volcano. I'm not 100% sure, but in this very specific setup where we have the thermosensors controlling when the steam turbines go, and the fact that we have 43 kilos worth of steam pressure, it's been doing okay. All of the metal's still coming out at sub 20 degrees as well. So I think we'll plan for the turbine to be somewhere around here. Actually, I can probably lower that by 1. Yeah, lead's fine. It's going to be cooled anyways. And then this tile, of course, is going to be a wonderful metal chilling tile, so we'll make it out of aluminum. We will need a thermo aqua tuner in here. And until we get this whole place set up, I'm also going to need a liquid lock. I believe we've trapped Jetpack Dullahan. Go ahead, buddy. This will also give us enough room to add a battery to the system. Ooh, I could add the battery in here too. And as the standard, we are going to need power for the aqua tuner. Okay, who's trapped? Sigwolf? Nobody. Which once again just proves how convenient it is to have our spines on both sides of the colony. I just realized if I put the battery in here, I have to put the heavy watt conductive wire in here, and I don't really want to do that. So we're going to keep the battery out there. And this spine, of course, will have to connect both. Another convenience of having the spine on both sides. Oh, look at that. We just completed our ancient specimen story trait. I'm not going to share any of the wonderful lore. That way it's not a spoiler, but we can activate the fossil query. And all we did, I didn't even really realize that we were that close, is you excavate each one of these fossils, and after you've done all 4 fossils, for instance, here's another one here, this little system here comes online, where for the cost of 100 grams of diamond and 80 seconds, you can turn it into 100 kilos worth of fossil, which, as I'm sure you can remember, we can then turn into even more lime, and sedimentary rock for that matter. Yeah, but Echo, why would you want to spend a kilo worth of diamond? Well, because in the late game, we'll be able to use rad bolts in the diamond press with some refined carbon to turn it into diamond. So the big production loop is, we feed whatever we want to the hatches. In fact, you could feed them sedimentary rock that you were getting from the fossil. The hatches leave coal, we turn the coal into refined carbon at the kiln, and then we take the refined carbon, turn it into diamond, and then the diamond into fossil. It's the circle of life, really. And look at this, all the polluted oxygen is almost gone. We only have a few more blobs here. So what I really need to do is deconstruct this gas reservoir, have it explode its 1,000 kilos worth of steam. Oh yeah, I'm sure that was a shockwave, and then just put it right back. Back up here at our gold volcano, we're gonna drop off some oil, enable auto bottle to get our nice liquid lock here. We need to clean all of this out still. And then we also need to get rid of all of this. Oh, I just realized I don't have my standard scaffolding here. This is 8 tiles there. So in preparation, hello, Hermie. I can start extending that now just so I know where it's going to be. Oh, tell me you lined up perfect. Oh, of course not. There we go. Things are just coming together. There's been no chaos this episode. And of course, I am recording this live. In other words, this is not a voiceover, so hopefully I just didn't jinx myself. Another suggestion I saw in the comments, and this one I rather like, is to start putting the liquid bridges below the thermo aqua tuner. Because normally the thermo aqua tuner is sitting on some insulated tile, so by putting the bridge down there, you can help further prevent any sort of heat transfer. Now this is not going to work in all cases, but in some it really does. In this case though, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the standard setup, because I am still trying to troubleshoot and figure out what exactly is going on. So the more bridges I put in the traditional setup, the better. Oh, this was a little bit of a goofy on my part. The thermo aqua tuner's too close to the other side. So I'm gonna need to reverse this. There we go. Just have to deconstruct the thermo aqua tuner and flip it around. I got sidetracked when I think I was talking about in the future what I wanted to do with this system. Is I wish I could have extended it across the entire bottom of the map and put all the liquids in this sort of sort. It wouldn't even need to take that big of a footprint. I could have just brought it right around and had the smaller tanks for ethanol, oil, petroleum, and whatever else we're filling up on. In goes the thermo aqua tuner, except now I'm going to hit O to rotate it, and then it's the same setup, it's just, you know, reverse. So now the liquids will be coming out through this way and wrapping around this way. Not ideal to have our cooling tile for all of our metal be the last in the change of cooling, but it's not going to take the aqua tuner long at all to cool this area, so I'm not too worried about it. The dupes are running a little bit behind on tasks, not exactly sure what's up with that. I didn't think I had them doing that many things, but we're almost done here, but we're still waiting for some oil, and it's been a little while. I have to get the oil in before I can start vacuuming this out. We also need to make sure we put our thermo sensor in here. That way we can be sure that even if the steam turbine is not running, because it doesn't need anything on the network, if this room gets too hot, we still want the steam turbine to start running. And then finally, we need our shipping, which not in love with the idea of putting the auto sweeper right above the volcano. This could bite me. So I'm probably going to leave the oil here for a little while just to make sure this whole system is running and working before I seal it up. But I can still put the conveyor loader over here, which will be ideal, except cannot be aluminum. Definitely needs to be steel. Something like this. And then we can take our rails and we're going to circle them all the way around and then go up through the insulated. Pause right here before we put a little bit more automation. Starting with the conveyor chute and then a timer sensor. The timer sensor is going to be set to open the chute once every 60 seconds or so. That way we can be sure that the 20 kilos worth of gold sitting in this tile had enough time to chill down to temperature. Now the melting point for cobalt ore rail is 1494. This gold volcano erupts at 2626. So I think I'm going to replace this with some steel just in these tiles right here. Normally you don't have to worry about it too much when you have steam in here. The only tile that you really need to worry about is this one right here, where the metal actually comes out of. So you never put rails through the center of your volcanoes. Looks like we've started dropping off some oil, about 50 kilos worth, so I can start pumping. High pressure gas vent, easy peasy. And with 2 shakes of a Draco's tail, I think they have tails, we have completely vacuumed out this room so we can get rid of the pump. And I'm also moving the liquid lock a little bit because I want to be able to put a tile here. And that way I can drop off a bunch of water at the bottom of here. So when we are finally ready to uncork the volcano, we'll have our base of water ready. I do need to prepare to fill the coolant line. I think we're going to use polluted water again. We don't have anything much better quite yet. Not that the duplicants don't have enough tasks as is. We're really hurting on mechatronics engineers. As you can see, the conveyor rail is still waiting to be put in. We do have 4 though. Ghost Rider, Matthew Campbell, Sulfur, and Kiku. But I don't think any of them had building as their priority. So Ghost Rider's building is now going to be priority. And we'll take Kiku. Kiku already was. Let's also do Sulfur. And just like that, Sulfur shows up, hammer in hand, and starts building all the conveyor rails. Definitely not chaos, just chaos adjacent. Some of our large power transformers have started overheating because, well, I made some of them out of lead. So I'm just replacing them with whatever we have on hand. And that'll give me another 25 degrees of threshold before they start overheating again. Eventually, it might be necessary to throw a small cooling loop wherever our spine is. It wouldn't have to work that much, but being able to keep these transformers cool in the long term is something that may become necessary. As luck would have it, we actually found a second duplicant during this episode. This Nails is a farming cook who has art fundamentals, interior decorating, and their only negative is they have a small bladder. Me too, Nails. Me too. Welcome to the farm, duplicant number 24, Sammy Boy. Oh, Sammy Boy, you really shouldn't be out and about on the base already. It's gonna take you forever to get anywhere. But you'll be fine. In preparation for the coolant loop, I'm gonna make sure that this aqua tuner does not start up. That way we don't overfill the line that I sort of seem to be infamous for. The gold volcano still says idle, so I don't believe we've hit dormancy yet, but you know that as soon as I uncork it, that's exactly what's going to happen. Couple updates around the colony while the dupes are doing that kind of work. We have finally hit crowded status with the Pacu in this tank. I mean, there's only 125 of them in there. This tank is still going strong though. Even though it has less water, it also has less critters based on the position of where the split is for the eggs. I'm really gonna have to start looking at doing a deep freezer. We have a lot of food that just sits outside the grill now, to include a whole mess of cooked seafood. Gets me thinking though, it might also be time for an oven, maybe some surf and turf? Delicious. So look forward to an infamous kitchen episode coming soon. Our loop is full, so now I'm just gonna switch this over to start pumping regular clean water, and we're gonna pump it right in through the steam turbine exhaust. Considering there's 32 tiles in here, and I like to sit around 40 kilos each, that means every tile will need to have about 160 kilos worth of water to hit that mark. The last thing we need to look at is transport. We have gold coming from here, and iron coming from here. Now, I don't necessarily want everything to jump onto the rails to be shipped over here to feed the plug slugs. So what I think we're going to do is add an auto sweeper to each side, not made out of steel, and a conveyor loader. And we're going to do the same, not made out of steel. And then we're going to do the same exact thing over here. And we have plenty of cobalt, so I'll grab this line and we'll just go all the way across. We'll meet up with this one here. And this will be our refined metal line that somehow we need to get to this position. Let's say up here. Will this work? Almost. Oh yeah, we can just jump right up here, go through, and this is where we'll hook in. And that way, after these lines are full, all the remaining iron and gold will be sitting in its spot for duplicants to be able to come and grab and use as we see fit. Our water's loading in, and we have a lot of rails to build, so I'm gonna go fast forward. We're up to about 70 kilos per tile, so another couple of buckets will be fine. But I also think there's enough water in here that I can dig out the volcano and start analyzing this as well. Just in time, too! We'll also turn the thermal aqua tuner on now. We want that metal to come out at 20 degrees, so that'll be perfect right there. Do one last sweep around here. Have this say gold, and this conveyor loader say iron, and the dupes have taken so long. Unreachable. What do we mean unreachable? Oh, I guess someone did some errant deconstructing. Don't know who to blame that one on. Definitely wasn't me. Now, when going to capture our wonderful plug slugs, we need to remember they're going to make a giant mess, because that's what they do. But we have a wonderful plug slug here and an egg, so I think we can try to wrangle that one. Then we'll also grab the egg and move it over in here. And then we'll incubate slug eggs inside the incubator. And we've already had our first eruption of the gold volcano, as we can see from the gold up here. Unfortunately, it only raised the temperature of the water to 50 degrees, but it also means we have gold on the line now, and it's joining all of this iron. Oh, what a beautiful sight to behold. All I have to do is set the critter feeder to say iron and gold, and our little plug slug pagoda is going to be complete. Is that the best name for this plug slug habitat? I don't know, but I'd ask you to let me know down in the comments below because, well, it helps engagement and gives us fun ideas. Not to mention the bonus of magic internet points. And the rail is already backed up on the line. This is exactly what we like to see, and we still have plenty sitting on this tile. This is the reason why I don't just hook this rail directly into here, because you want this system to operate normally. And you also don't want 100% of your refined metals sitting and stuck on a conveyor rail. Maybe I should have extended this a little bit more. Perhaps something like this. Yeah, being able to maximize how much rail you have inside the metal volcano tamers is always a good thing, even if in this case it's gold, and gold loses its temp very quickly. And we can see the gold is already sitting at 52 degrees, just like the water is. In fact, whenever Sulfur finishes analyzing this volcano, we'll be able to tell exactly how much more eruption time that we have left, because it may take a dormancy cycle to get this whole thing into a steam bath. And if you're wondering why that's the case, it's because gold has such a low specific heat capacity at 0.129. When we look at something like iron, it has a specific heat capacity, what, nearly 3 times as much? So the way to look at it is it holds 3 times as much heat. Sulfur has finished analyzing the gold volcano. We were rewarded with 13 data banks. Oh, happy day. And we don't have another dormancy period for another 30 cycles. Great for us. Let me fast forward a little bit and see if I can't accelerate this process and give you the final product. We have eruption in 4 seconds. The water is at 51 degrees right now. And look how quickly the gold loses its heat. All said and done, after the volcano finished erupting, the water's at 74 degrees. Slowly but surely, we'll get there. Another eruption and we started to get steam. Unfortunately, all the materials and the rails up here are still cool enough to where we now have a nice little rain room. I am going to seal this off though before we do start creating steam. If we do have to get back in there, that's no big deal. We'll leave the liquid lock, but it's better to seal it up. That way we don't get steam and oil mixing and all that sort of nastiness. Fun fact I didn't realize. Plug sluglets can't climb the walls. Plug slugs can, but this little guy's not going to be able to eat until they hit cycle 5 and grow up and be able to use their climby legs. This gives us 4 plug slugs in here. Now they're not producing a lot right now because they're still wild, which means their critter metabolism is minus 75. But as soon as they're tame, they will start producing a lot of hydrogen, and slowly the top of our pagoda will fill up. Update from a few cycles later, we're now up to 140 degrees worth of steam in here. Despite that, the gold in here doesn't stand a chance. It's sitting at 16 degrees. And you just saw a piece of gold go from 160 degrees to 18 in a split second. So beautiful. We also have a wonderful collection of hydrogen over here. So this pump is going to start pumping, and that's feeding directly into our hydrogen generators. And lucky for us, this chaos-free episode has also given us a third duplicate. This Wren is a ranching operating builder that's really going to help out with some of those mechatronics engineering tasks. They're uncultured, buff, and their only negative is, well, they're a plant murderer and they're unempathetic. So they're going to have to stay on the critter side of the farming. Welcome to the farm, duplicate number 25, Miss Pandamanda. Look at that beautiful 1600 watts of power from each plug slug heading directly onto the power grid. We have so much power, I don't even know what to do with it. Our petroleum generators are only running in the past 5 cycles 0.9%. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode and are still enjoying the farm series. Let me know in the comments below what you're looking forward to seeing. We still have several critters left and a whole lot more plant life. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.